Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are back with more uh, 2025 to 2026 state governments and officials. Today we're looking at none other than the state of California. Let's get into this. California has a legislative, executive, and judicial branch, much like the other states we went over so far and the federal system. Uh, and allows direct participation of the electorate by initiative, referendum, recall, and ratification. So, if there's something they put it forth for the public to vote upon. Now, of course, there are certain elected executive members for the state. The governor is none other than Gavin Newsom. The lieutenant governor is Lainey Kounalakis. Both Newsom and she are Democrats, as shall be the case with all the other elected executive members. They're all Democrats. The Secretary of State for California is Shirley Weber. The Attorney General for California is Rob Bonta. The State Treasurer for California is Fiona Ma. The State Controller for California is Malia Cohen. The State Superintendent of Public Instruction is Tony Thurmond. And the State Insurance Commissioner is Ricardo Lara. Like I said, all elected members of the executive branch. Now, there are members who aren't elected, notably members like the cabinet or cabinet level agencies. Let's take a look at that. We have the California Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency under Tomikia Moss. The Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation under Jeffrey McComber. The State Board of Education under Brooks Allen. The Environmental Protection Agency of California under Yana Garcia. The California Department of Finance under Joe Stephenshaw. The California Department of Food and Agriculture under Karen Ross. The California Government Operations Agency under Nick Maduros. The California's Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development under D.D. Myers. California Governor's Office of Emergency Services under Nancy Ward. California Governor's Office of Planning and Research under Samuel Asafa. California Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs under Christina Snyder Ashtari, the California Health and Human Services Agency under Kim Johnson, the California Labor and Workforce Development Agency under Stuart Knox, the California Military Department under Adjutant Generals Matthew Beavers, the California Natural Resources Agency under Wade Crowfoot, the California State Transportation Agency under Tox Omishakin, the California Department of Veterans Affairs under Lindsay Sin, and California Volunteers under Josh Friday. So that gives us a look at the executive department, and much of the same departments are listed here. Now, for most but not all the leaders of those entities are normally appointed by the governor and confirmed by the state senate. Despite their independence, the governor can exert influence on them from time over time by waiting for incumbent leaders to reach the ends of their terms and appointing new ones and support the governor's current agenda. Examples are the regents for the University of California, California State University Board of Trustees, California Community Colleges Board of Governors, the California Public Utilities Commission, the California State Auditor, and the Fair Political Practices Commission. Now, with that, let's go ahead and look at the judiciary, the court system in California first. It is set up via the California Constitution and has a structure with the California Supreme Court at the top, followed by the California Court of Appeal as the primary appellate courts, and then the California Superior Courts as the primary trial courts. And it also has a policy-making body of the California courts known as the Judicial Council and its staff. Now, California Supreme Court, headquartered in San Francisco with branch offices in Los Angeles and Sacramento, hears arguments each year in all three locations and consists of the Chief Justice and 6 Associate Justices, so 7 members of the California Supreme Court. It has a original jurisdiction in a variety of cases, including habeas corpus proceedings, which deal with due process and the right to due process for citizens, and has the authority to review all the decisions of the California Courts of Appeal, as well as an automatic appeal for cases where the death penalty has been issued by the trial court. It deals with about 8,800 cases per year, though review is discretionary in most cases, and it dismisses the vast majority of petitions without comment. It hears arguments and drafts full opinions for about 100 to 120 cases each year, of which about 20 are automatic death penalty appeals. It also supervises California lawyers through the State Bar Court of California. Usually there's a state bar. I'm not sure about a state bar court. Administrative arm of the California Supreme Court for the adjudication of disciplinary and regulatory matters involving California attorneys. Though not formally a court of record, its judges are subject to admonition, censure, removal, or retirement. Okay, so it deals with potential issues where some California lawyers have been seen or suggested to be outside of norms in the way they should act. The California Courts of Appeal are the intermediate appellate courts. The state is geographically divided into 6 appellate districts. Notably, all published California appellate decisions are binding on all superior courts, regardless of appellate district. The first appellate district sits in San Francisco, the second in Los Angeles, the third in Sacramento, the fourth in San Diego, the fifth in Fresno, and the sixth in San Jose. The districts are further divided into 19 divisions, sitting throughout the state at 9 locations, and there are 105 justices serving on those courts. So yeah. Unlike the state Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal have mandatory review jurisdiction under the informal legal tradition of common law countries that all litigants are entitled to at least one appeal. In practice, this works out to about 16,000 appeals per year, resulting in 12,000 opinions. Not all appeals are pursued properly or are meritorious enough to justify an opinion. Under common law, judicial opinions themselves have legal effect through the rule of stare decisis, which deals with precedent as a judicial decision that serves as an authority for courts when deciding subsequent identical or similar cases. Fundamental to common law legal systems, precedent operates under the principle of stare decisis, where past judicial decisions serve as case law to guide future rulings. But because of their crushing caseloads, about 200 matters per justice per year, the courts of appeals are permitted to take the shortcut of selecting only the best options for publication. This way, they can draft opinions fast and quickly dispose of the vast majority of cases without worrying that they are accidentally making bad law. About 7% of opinions are ultimately selected for publication and become part of California law. The power of intermediate courts of appeal over the superior courts is quite different from the power of the courts of appeals of the federal government over the federal district courts. The first court of appeal to rule on a new legal issue will bind all lower superior courts statewide. However, litigants in other appellate districts may still appeal a superior court's diverse ruling to their own court of appeal, which has the power to fashion a different rule. When such a conflict arises, all superior courts have the discretion to choose which rule they like until the California Supreme Court grants a review and creates a single rule that binds all courts statewide. So it's just saying decisions made at the appellate court levels say that all courts underneath follow that rule. Now, there can be cases where they conflicting appeal decisions can arise. By use of a different court of appeal in a different appellate district, and in those cases the Supreme Court is the one that finally makes the decision. Otherwise, the district courts and such can choose which ruling to follow. Superior courts. The California Superior Courts are the superior courts with the general jurisdiction to hear and decide any civil or criminal action which is not specifically designated to be heard in some other court or before a governmental agency, such as a workers' compensation. As mandated by the California Constitution, each of the 58 counties in California has a superior court with one or more judges. Appellate divisions. The superior courts have appellate divisions, superior court judges sitting as appellate judges, which hear appeals from decisions of other superior court judges or commissioners or judges pro tem who heard and decided relatively minor cases that previously would have been heard in inferior courts, such as infractions, misdemeanors, and limited civil actions where the amount in controversy is below $25,000. There is also the Judicial Council of California, which is a rulemaking body that is responsible for implementing council policy. And in addition, the court may make local rules for its own government and government of its officers. The courts of California have developed a large body of case law through the decisions of the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, which are published in the California Reporter of Decisions, in the California Reports, and California Appellate Reports, respectively. Appellate reports. California Court Case Management System is how court business is usually conducted. So, California, and let's see. Supreme Court and Appeals Court judges are appointed by the governor to fill a vacancy and must be confirmed by the California Commission on Judicial Appointments, although counties may choose to use the system for Superior Court judges. The California Commission on Judicial Appointments consists of the Chief Justice, Attorney General, and Senior Presiding Justice of the Court of Appeal of the affected district or of the entire state. Superior Court judges are either appointed by the governor to fill a vacancy after being reviewed by the JNE or elected by the county residents in nonpartisan elections. Judges' superior courts are elected within the counties for 6 years unless placed into office by the governor as a replacement. Judges of courts of appeal are elected within the districts for 12 years, and judges of the Supreme Court are elected at large for 12 years. Let's see. Anyway, finally, let's go ahead and look at the California State Legislature. Much like other states we have already went over, as well as the federal government, bicameral, two-chamber. It has an upper chamber, a Senate, so very familiar. Has a lower chamber. It's not called the House, it's called the Assembly, which is essentially the same, but it just uses a different name. Your current president of the Senate is the Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis. President Pro Tem of the Senate, or President Pro Tempore of the Senate, is Mike McGuire, and your Speaker of the Assembly is Robert A. Rivas. Now let's look at the breakdown. 40 senators. Right now you're looking at a breakdown of 30 Democrats to 10 Republicans. And in the Assembly you have 80 members with a breakdown of 60 Democrats to 20 Republicans. Although it looks like you have an independent that votes one way or the other. I can't tell just looking at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So they apparently caucus with the Republicans. So yeah. Constitutions, legislative session schedule, new legislators convene with new 2-year session to organize in the Assembly and Senate chambers, respectively. Members of the Assembly are elected from 80 districts, serving 2-year terms. And all 80 Assembly seats are subject to election every 2 years. So it's automatically renewed after 2 years. All 80 seats in the Assembly, its House of Representatives, elected every 2 years. So pretty common practice. Members of the Senate are elected from 40 districts and serve 4-year terms. And every 2 years, half the Senate is subject to election, with odd number districts up for election during presidential elections, and even number districts up for elections during midterm elections. So yeah, 4-year terms, but it's kind of parsed. One half one election, one half the other election. Much like the federal election, and we saw it in a number of states as well, but the federal election, you get 1/3 of the Senate, one election cycle. The next election cycle, 2 years later, you get another third of the Senate, and then the next election cycle, 2 years after that, you get the final third of the Senate, and it keeps going around in that order, because senators serve a 6-year term federally. But yeah, we get a good look at how California's legislature works, how its executive branch. See, we've learned so far, many of these states, their governments are pretty similar to the U.S. federal government. The federal government kind of sets the standard, and then the states kind of follow suit. So yeah. But we'll go ahead and end this episode here. This has been a look at the state government and officials for the state of California. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing. Ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my links and sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.